Outlet Liquor is your place to buy a case. Stock up and save when you shop the lowest prices available every day at Outlet Liquor. You never have to wait for a sale. The more you buy, the more you save. Only at Outlet Liquor.
What's your outlet?
Welcome, everybody, to Two Goalies, One Mic, episode 116. Very short edition in between the first and second period here of a 0-0 game between Buffalo and the Boston Bruins, joined by my co-host Connor Hurls himself, and Matthew Fairburn from The Athletic with Buffalo. Matt, thanks for hopping on with us, man. I really appreciate this. I've been trying to get this going for a couple weeks now, but thank you for coming on. Oh,
thanks so much for having me. Glad we could connect.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I really respect your writing. I remember I mentioned that one piece you did on Jill, and I think it was the NHL's like top 100 or 99. Yeah, I really enjoyed that piece and everything else you've written over your years contributing to Buffalo hockey. So again, thank you for coming on.
No, I appreciate it. It was it's been a fun first year on the beat. Definitely jumped on at a good time. I had chipped in and helped out John a little bit before, when I was covering the Bills, but first year being full time on the Sabres, and it's turned out to be pretty good timing. Yeah,
I know, right? Like, this year, I've said it a lot this year, not just because they're winning, but just the overall, and I know the buzzwords like culture and vibes they get overused a lot, but I think they really do apply a lot to this season, especially with everything that transpired the previous year with Eichel and Sam, and coming into this season, and like they have the fans back, right? Like they're back, they're engaged. Maybe not as much so as it was 10 years ago, but they're engaged. And coming into this NHL trade deadline, I guess expectations have grown a little high, and patience is starting to grow a little thin. And just your thoughts on that over the past week, just kind of the chaoticness of what the NHL trade line has been, and we're still less than 24 hours away.
Yeah, it's been wild. I think how wild it's been is probably part of why there's some Sabres fans that are feeling a little impatient, because it seems like everybody's making deals. There's, especially in the Eastern Conference, just an absolute arms race going on of teams loading up for playoff runs. And, it's like you mentioned, fans are back and they're engaged. So you're going to have some impatience. You're going to have some restlessness this time of year. But the Sabres have stuck to the plan that they outlined, that they've been pretty transparent and pretty consistent about, in terms of letting the young players grow into their roles and not wanting to block young players from ice time. And I imagine that got a little bit complicated because they're sitting there right on the edge of a playoff spot, seems to flip-flop every night, whether they're in that final wild card spot. And, you certainly have to battle that as a general manager of saying, does this team deserve, that extra push to maybe get in and get that, monkey off the back and end the playoff drought? Or, has this team earned the right to go together and try to earn it, with the guys that got them there? So far, Riley Stillman is the only outside addition, and he's making his debut. Pretty decent first period against the Bruins. He's paired up with Matthias Samuelsson, but so far that's the only addition they've made. They've still got a little while here, but they've been, anybody that's listened to Kevin Adams, I think you're always wondering, is that what he's saying? Is that what he's actually going to do when push comes to shove? So far, he's doing pretty much what he said he would do.
In your best estimation, with 16 hours to go, what type of move do you tangibly envision happening if he does decide to make a move? Like, there's not a lot out there in terms of buzzwords, buzz names that a lot of NHL fans have looked for. They're basically all gone at this point. But with a lot of fire sales in Arizona, Chicago, even Nashville at this point, is there something that you think realistically can be done in the next 16 hours?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it seems like anytime anybody makes a list of names, you better be writing it quickly because there's going to be a trade that's going to screw that up. Dante Fabro in Nashville is probably the best, guy that would make sense that's still may be realistic because, like you said, Nashville has sort of jumped into the fray as a seller. When I look at moves that the Sabres could potentially make, I think the player most likely has to be young-ish. Fabro fits that at 24, I think he is now. Young, some term, and the cost to acquire probably doesn't have to, wouldn't be substantial. I think the Sabres are really hesitant to move that first round pick, and I think that's smart in a really good draft. And with everybody that's already off the board here, there's not a lot of guys out there still that are worth a first round pick, and that you're going to pay a little bit of a markup this time of year. So you're paying a first round pick, you want to make sure that's somebody that's worth it. And I'm not sure any of those players are going to become available. This time of year, with where they're at in the rebuild and with the way Kevin Adams has operated, it's going to be potentially another depth type of guy, maybe to boost the forward group. The middle six could use, another body after Jack Quinn is doing a pretty good job filling in for Alex Tuck, but you need to kind of backfill those minutes and, give the team another option besides Vinny Hinostroza.
Yep.
Maybe they add another defenseman. I don't know. I guess it depends just how strongly they feel about Riley Stillman. And my early impression is that they feel, pretty good about the guy that they're getting. So it could be a pretty quiet Friday, but those are some of the things I'm thinking about, in terms of what Kevin Adams could be looking at.
Do you think fans are justified at being upset about the Chychrun situation?
To an extent, yes. I think all along the Chychrun story was that the price was too high. And that wasn't just Buffalo that, was, kind of walking at the price. It seemed like around the league, a lot of teams, thought Arizona's ask was pretty high. That's why it's taken a long time for him to get moved. And then when the trade came down, my first thought was, that wasn't that bad. It's like they actually did come down on the price a little bit. I think the way I think about Chychrun, and I understand, it's like, we talk about off the top that fans are into it. They're excited, they're engaged, and they want to see this team get back to the playoffs. More than justified. And wanting a player like that at a price like that is also more than justified. My hang up with him all along, first off, I don't mind Kevin Adams hanging on to that pick in what should be a strong draft. Still don't know exactly how high that pick could be, but looking like certainly a top half of the first round pick, maybe even better. And the other part of it is where Chychrun fits in, because he's going to want to be a power play quarterback, most likely. And you have two of those already. Yeah. And he is on a very manageable number at 4.6 for 2 seasons after this one. So, even if he were to walk after that, the price is still probably worth it for, a couple seasons of that guy. And, you could probably flip him again and recoup some of the costs. So I understand all of that. I think the big question I had all along was, where does he fit in as another offensive, defenseman, another guy that wants to run the power play? Certainly it doesn't hurt to add good players, and it doesn't hurt to do that. But the timing of where the Sabres are, Chychrun isn't pushing them into Stanley Cup contention this season. No. So I can see both sides of it. I understand why they were hesitant to move that pick. And frankly, I wonder if Ottawa's pick was more appealing in the end to Arizona. It's splitting hairs a little bit because they're close in the standings, but it is something to consider, the whole package of they probably wanted the highest pick they could possibly get. And I would think that's probably going to be Ottawa's, but who knows? Now they have Jacob Chychrun. That's kind of how this goes.
It's
so
kind of counterintuitive, right? Like you want that pick to be as good as it possibly be. Well, you just gave them a piece that's right. Kind of like now
it might break the tie. Yeah. Yeah, it might be what pushes Ottawa over the edge. I mean, Ottawa is going in a very different direction than Buffalo in terms of how they're trying to build. They made some splashy additions in the offseason, and now they make this big move at the deadline. And I think the Sabres being patient is okay for now still, but they're going to have to start to get in on some of those moves, whether it be in the offseason or next trade deadline, because you want to round out the core at some point and take advantage of the window that seems like it's opening. But with how much the Eastern Conference has loaded up, clearly the window is not right now, I would say, for Buffalo or Ottawa. So it'll be interesting to see, this group of teams that is trying to rebuild while the Eastern Conference is such a beast right now. You've got like Ottawa, Detroit, Buffalo, Montreal even is, certainly a step or two behind, but, also trying to build something. Which of those teams can emerge? Because Don Granato has talked about how there is a bit of a shift happening in the Eastern Conference. You have these teams that are going to start to age themselves out a little bit, like Pittsburgh and Washington. Which of those teams is going to be able to hang on, and which of those teams below them is going to be able to rise up and take a spot. And I think the Sabres are being patient, trying to bide their time and make sure they're ready to pounce when the conference slips a little bit, which certainly won't be this year because it's gotten pretty exciting, what it looks like ahead of the playoffs.
It's going to be an absolute bloodbath in the first round. Just piggybacking off your point, and I'll let Connor take the next one. I agree. Like, judging from his interview with Pierre LeBrun, he mentioned a lot about they're interested in making a trade if it makes sense from a hockey standpoint. They're not interested in rentals, like players that can contribute to the future, that are kind of cost controlled, which kind of, Jacob Chickering kind of fit that bill. $4.5 million a year, for a player of his caliber. That's a team friendly deal. And it does kind of fit a hole there in your top four that you were kind of hoping to figure out with Lyubushkin maybe at the start of the season. That hasn't worked out. Yoki Haru's game really hasn't come around. So I can totally understand. I was upset too. And it's like, I was never a guy that was pounding the pavement demanding Jacob Chickering. I was never that guy. But when you saw the return and then you realize, well, we could have easily matched that. We just gave up Josh Bloom for Riley Stillman, a guy who I'm friends with a lot of Vancouver podcasters and fans out there. They were ecstatic to see Riley Stillman gone. So like, just judging from just talking to them to get to know the player, I'm just like, we just kind of we didn't trade a blue chip prospect, but a second round pick is a point per game in the OHL. And, for me, it was just like, this guy could potentially be a contributor at the NHL level in a few years. I felt that they made out more than we did in that deal at face value, looking at the trade from face value. Now I could be dead wrong. And, Riley Stillman could, really turn things around here in Buffalo over the next season, season and a half, because he'll be here next year as well. But, I definitely agree that fans were a little justified in being angry, myself included, again, because I wasn't I need Jacob Chickering guy. But when you see the value that Arizona ended up getting back when they backed themselves into that corner, waiting as long as they did, Buffalo definitely could have matched or even beaten that offer. And maybe if it did come to salary retention, which that was kind of alluded to too, salary retention shouldn't have been a problem for Buffalo. They could have retained the entire salary and still been able to sign Dolly and down the road, Owen Power. But again, I'm not Kevin Adams. Weren't part of those discussions, and maybe they wanted something more out of Buffalo, like a Savoy, and they weren't really to budge on that. So, Connor.
I think we're getting down to it with the second period here. So I guess just real quickly, the first period was pretty good. Sabres play really well on the road. I guess what is your best prediction for how the rest of this game goes?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough one, obviously. They're hanging in there pretty well, and I think they're certainly benefiting from the fact that Boston just got off a West Coast trip. They've had a couple of injuries. They've got some new pieces that they're trying to get to fit in, and it's interesting about this Sabres team that, it seems that on the road against really tough opponents in these big spots, they seem like they've been rising to the occasion. Now, no Rasmus Dahlin, if you can pull that off, then I think that, says a lot about what they could do down the stretch, right? If you can go into Boston and win without Rasmus Dahlin, I just don't know that that's something that a lot of people are expecting, but here they are, scoreless through one period and playing them, fairly tight. Jeremy Swayman's playing a pretty good game. So, yeah, I think, expecting them to win in Boston is still tough. But, I'm encouraged by the way this team seems to take a bad performance and just flush it pretty quickly. It doesn't seem to spiral on them. Obviously, early in the season, they had that 8-game losing streak, and they've had a few other little streaks, but they've gotten better at nipping things in the bud and turning things around quickly and forgetting about it. And they're especially good at that when they go on the road. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they definitely have shown to have short memories, and that's huge. One last thing before we let you go. Obviously, the second period's already started. If the Sabres were to make a move, taking tonight's result to complete consideration, do you foresee them looking at a goaltender right now? Because we saw Kevin Weeks bring up UPL's name in trade circles. Not surprising, but not surprising too. As a goalie myself, we have 3 goalies here. I didn't even realize you played net until Connor mentioned to me he listens to your podcast with Joe Piscaglia. With that, do you think that Kevin has to be more inclined at looking at a goaltender rather than more help offensively, since they are the 3rd highest scoring team in the league?
I would be surprised. I don't think it would be necessarily a bad move. It would potentially solve a bit of a roster crunch for them if they found a way to move out, a couple guys and, switch things up in net. But I don't think they're moving off Craig Anderson. The guy came back to play for Buffalo and play with this team, and everything has gone pretty much according to plan. He's playing well. He's, loves being a part of the team. He's a big leader. I think they've got, certainly they're not necessarily sitting there saying UPL for sure is 100% the future, but they've been encouraged by what they've seen. And I don't know exactly what Eric Comrie's value would be out there. So could they upgrade the net? Absolutely. Should they seriously look into it in the offseason, depending how the year finishes out with UPL and Comrie? I think they certainly should. Devin Levi still being probably a year or 2 away from the NHL. So that's a big question that they have to answer at some point. Are they going to do it at the deadline? My bet would be no, but we're still learning a lot about Kevin Adams. That's what, especially first season on the beat for me, I'm trying to figure out, when he says stuff, where can I read between the lines? Or so far he's pretty much, stuck to what he said, publicly, and he seems pretty comfortable with this goalie trio. So I'm not expecting a move in net, but I think it's probably the number 1 spot to watch heading into the offseason.
I tend to agree. I think the Eric Comrie experiment, while we don't have a huge sample size with the injury earlier in the season, I just don't think that that's the direction they're going to go. If they can get out of that contract, they will, and maybe they'll look elsewhere. Thank you.
It's unfortunate for Eric because he played pretty well, and he hung in there a little. Early in the season, I thought he was playing okay. He played really well in Calgary and Edmonton, and this is the opportunity that he's sort of been waiting for. And then he injures his knee and hasn't really gotten a chance to refine his rhythm, because that's how it goes. Another guy takes the net and starts running with it. And especially a knee injury for a goalie is always going to take some time, and getting the timing back is going to be iffy. So it's a tough situation for him because, guys in that room absolutely love him. He's, just a great teammate, but it's because of the small sample size and because of, the injury and everything, it's really hard to bank on him as your 1A or 1B, either one, when you're going to be, they could certainly get by this year with saying, hey, just trying to let this young team grow and X, Y, and Z. But next year, I think the bar is going to be raised. People are going to be expecting the playoffs, and goaltending is such a make or break piece sometimes. I'm preaching to the choir here, I know, but it's one of the most important positions in sports. And so if they don't have that right, you could have a really good team undone by bad goaltending. So I'm really curious to see how it goes, not just this offseason, rest of the year, but into the future because they've got some intriguing pieces in the pipeline. Devin Levi is super exciting. How they develop that and, get everything settled is going to be, one of the bigger factors in just how quickly they can get, from being a fringe playoff team to a contender and a team that wins in the playoffs.
And I can promise you, Devin Levi, all the speculation about him, he's all in on Buffalo. I mentioned before, I'm writing a piece on him right now. That is, his own mother is actually helping me write. It's kind of crazy. I've never met a more committed hockey mom in my life. It's wild. If you type her son's name in any social media platform, she's on there liking, commenting. It's pretty awesome. But we had him on Two Goalies One Mic last year. Him and his teammate and best friend Justin Ritskowian, who we just had on again recently, Justin, and he was extremely excited when he got traded to Buffalo. Obviously, there isn't a huge opportunity with Bob and Spencer Knight down in Florida, but he has ties to the city of Buffalo dating from back when he was 12 years old. That many people know about, and that he cherishes a lot. And, he told me all about it. His mom told me all about it. And I feel very confident when I say that kid is all in on Buffalo, and he can't wait to probably get back to development camp come the end of the season when he signs. So, yeah,
he's in doing this job, he is one of the better, what is he, 21, like 21-year-old kids to talk to that I've ever come across. He's just so self-aware, so smart and thoughtful, and he's just got a ton of energy. I think as much as Sabres fans think they're excited about this guy, they're going to be more excited when they get to know the personality, because he's really a pretty special kid.
When I make these hoodies, these actually I'm wearing one right now, the Sabres, the Hayashik Goat shirts and hoodie, and he saw it online and he asked me about it. He's like, do you make those? I can get one. I was like, well, you're at development camp in a few weeks. I'll get you one. I'll come bring it to you. And I brought him one to start a development camp. On the last day out, he comes out and he's wearing it. I thought that was really cool. He goes, yeah, man. He goes, I love Hasek. He goes, he's a big advocate for small goalies like me. He's like, how can you not love the guy? So I thought it was always pretty cool that he was wearing that, and he supports Buffalo even from over at Northeastern right now. He follows along, and as he chases post Beanpot Championship a national title. And now that looks to be clearly his in the future, now with Eric Portillo sent to LA.
Yeah, that was probably a big factor, I would think, in the in Eric and his camp's thinking, that the net looked like, between Luukkonen and Levi, that it was going to be a little bit tough to find a spot. And he made it clear pretty early this season that it was going to head that way. And the Sabres are fortunate in that respect, that he communicated it and that he was up front and that they could recoup the pick, and no harm, no foul, really. I mean, you get the pick back and basically the original draft position, and then you just move on and go from there. They've already, they're fortunate that they have, they picked a goalie in the second round last year. They have Devin Levi. They've got Luukkonen's young. So it's not as if they're without options. It's never great to lose another lottery ticket, but they'll have a chance to take another swing, next June if they want to.
And personally, and one last thought is, when it comes to a goaltender like me, I don't know about you, but I'm sure Connor as well, we thrive off competition. I never shied away from it. I always thought it brought the best of me. I'm not saying it wouldn't against Eric, but I kind of look at that situation. It's like, is he running away from the opportunity in Buffalo because of Devin Levi? Or maybe he just never wanted to be here to begin with. I don't know. But just that thought to me is kind of like, I would want him to want to win that net rather than run away from it.
Yeah, I definitely don't think, regardless of what he thinks of whether it's the best situation. I mean, look, he's got the right to do it. He's, been in school, and him and his agent are going to try to find the absolute best spot. And I understand that Buffalo has work to do to get its reputation back to where, players want to be there. But I actually thought it was a pretty good situation for him. Like you said, you come in and compete, and you never know what happens. There's no sure things with prospects. And
he's a great
Devin, and he is he's got the size, the athleticism, and the tools to be, an NHL starter. And this team is pretty desperate for somebody to declare themselves as that starter. So thought it was a fairly decent opportunity for him if he wanted to jump on it. But I don't fault, players for exercising their rights. It's unfortunate that it goes that way in hockey where you can lose a guy for nothing, but the Sabres were fortunate here to get the value back. And, it's comes out in the wash. Now we'll see what happens with Ryan Johnson. And then, hopefully they can get Devin Levi locked up sooner rather than later. Because I know people are already starting to wonder, is this going to happen with him? I don't think so. I think it seems like the furthest thing from his mind. So I think he's a Sabre, but certainly it give everyone some peace of mind when he puts pen to paper.
Yep, absolutely. And it wasn't a rip on, I guess, on Eric. He's actually also been a guest on our show, and very well-spoken kid, highly intelligent, like you said, phenomenal athlete, and he has the size to be an NHL goaltender. Just for me, just outside opinion, I always thrived off the competition when my back was up against the wall. That was always when the best goaltender in me used to come out. So, Matt, thanks for coming on with us, man. I hope to have you on again soon. Maybe not during a game when we're up against the wire like this, but appreciate you coming on, man. I love your work. I love the podcast. I love your writing with The Athletic, and just a phenomenal first year, and hopefully many more years to come.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. Happy to jump on with you guys anytime.
Thanks, absolutely. Man. Thank you. This has been episode 116 of Two Goalies, One Mic, with obviously Connor Hurls 13 himself, and Matthew Fairburn from The Athletic with Buffalo. So I am Duane Steinel. I'll hang up and listen, and we'll see you next time.